The city shone like a giant garland scattered across the streets. Shop windows were decorated with bright ribbons and sparkling baubles, and the air smelled of cinnamon, tangerines, and cotton candy. People hurried with packages, smiled at each other, laughed, and took pictures in front of Christmas trees. It all looked like a celebration of life. But for Mary, the holiday had become a trial. She walked down the street, clutching her coat collar as if trying to hide from this dazzling cheer. Her eyes scanned the crowd but caught nothing. Music, pouring from the speakers near the mall, pierced her like a knife. It was one of her father's favorite songs. He would have liked it. He would have joked about knowing all the words and sang off beat. But no one was beside her. For months, she had lived in silence, and as the holidays approached, it became harder to breathe. Everything around seemed to shout, "You are alone. You have lost. You will never get back what you had." Mary quickened her pace and turned toward the park where the fair lights were burning. She wasn't there to rejoice. She just wanted to feel a spark of warmth. Perhaps the candles or the smell of hot chocolate could chase the emptiness away. At the same time, Alex walked down another street, trying not to look at the shop windows. Every couple embracing by the tree reminded him of what he had lost. Plans for this new year, a trip, a dinner for two, gifts. Everything had fallen apart in a moment, and now all the sparkle felt like mockery. He shoved his hands deeper into his coat pockets. Inside, it was colder than outside. What foolishness! Holidays! For whom are they? The happy ones, those who don't know emptiness? He intended to cut through the park. It was the shortest path to the pharmacy. But as he entered, he slowed. The air smelled of mulled wine, honey, and roasted nuts. Snow crunched softly underfoot. Children rode the carousel. Parents laughed. Alex felt out of place in this light. But for some reason, he didn't turn back. Their paths began to converge the moment Mary stopped at a mulled wine stall. She reached for her wallet, but her bag slipped from her shoulder. Books and a notebook fell into the snow, scattering across the ground. Mary knelt, her hands trembling from the cold, and something else. "Let me help," a voice said beside her. She looked up and saw a man. Dark coat, tired eyes, holding a quiet kind of solitude. He bent down and picked up one of the books, Poems About Hope. He lingered on the cover and quietly said, "Good choice. Sometimes words heal better than people." Mary froze. It seemed he wasn't speaking to her, but to himself. Yet she replied, "Sometimes." They looked at each other. In her gaze, he saw a pain he knew too well. In his, she recognized the same emptiness she carried every day. Around them, laughter and music continued. But for that moment, everything fell silent.
Mary hastily stuffed her things back into her bag, but her fingers trembled stubbornly, and the book refused to fit. The stranger crouched beside her and calmly, without a word, helped gather the remaining notebooks. "Thank you," she whispered, avoiding his gaze. "No problem," he said, handing her the notebook. A snowy forest was drawn on its cover. "Do you write?" Mary flinched. People rarely noticed her notebooks. She disliked explaining that they contained notes, sketches, sometimes poems, mostly an attempt to pour out her thoughts. "Sometimes," she answered vaguely. "And you?" The man smirked slightly. "I used to write music. Now, less often." His voice was calm, but within that calm lay a bitter residue, as if every word had been wrested from deep inside. Mary nodded, accepting his confession, though she didn't know what to say. They stood, Around them, people bustled, laughed, children tugged parents toward carousels, and they stood as if in their own invisible circle of quiet. "Would you like some mulled wine?" he unexpectedly offered, looking at her frozen fingers. "You've been standing here anyway." She wanted to refuse, habit, but suddenly she felt refusing this man would be like turning away from a hand extended through the snow. "All right," she whispered. They stood together at the stall. Mary held the cup with both hands, inhaling the scent of cinnamon and orange. Steam wrapped around her face, warming it. "I'm Alex," he said, after a pause. "Mary," she introduced herself. "Beautiful name," he noted, immediately looking away, as if afraid he had said too much. She smiled faintly, but for the first time in a long while, it was not a polite smile. It was genuine, however small. "Do you not like the holidays?" Alex asked, nodding to the lights around them. Mary paused. People rarely hid such feelings, but he voiced them plainly. "Let's say," she lowered her gaze to her cup, "I used to love them, very much. Now, they remind me of what is gone." He nodded slowly, as if her words continued his own thoughts. "Me too," he said. "I used to think dreams come true at New Year. Now it seems only that what you've lost is illuminated." The words hurt, but brought a strange relief. Her pain was heard, not judged. They fell silent, but this was not awkward silence. It was a warm pause where words were unnecessary. Snow intensified, settling on their shoulders and hair. Mary noticed snowflakes frozen on his eyelashes in the glow of the garlands. She suddenly felt sorry for this man, and lighter herself. He knows what emptiness means. "You know," she said after a pause, "sometimes I think maybe we just need to get through it, not the holidays, everything else." Alex looked at her longer than a casual conversation allows. "Perhaps," he said, "but maybe it's easier not to go through it alone." Those words were so quiet, they nearly got lost in the fair's noise. But Mary heard them, and felt something warm, long forgotten, stir in her chest. When they parted, Mary walked home thinking of the notebook in her bag, and in it, a new entry would surely appear, not about pain, about this meeting. Alex lingered until the cup in his hands cooled. For the first time in weeks, his heart beat not just from memories, but from something new.
Mary didn't expect to see him again so soon, but a few days later, returning from work, she noticed a familiar figure at the same holiday market. Alex was standing by a stall with gingerbread, thoughtfully turning one in his hands, as if choosing not between patterns, but between memories. He noticed her almost immediately, and a flicker of mild surprise crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by a warm smile. "Good evening, Mary," he said. She felt her heart respond unexpectedly to the sound of her name on his lips. "Good evening, Alex." "It seems fate decided that one conversation wasn't enough," he joked. She couldn't help but smile, and this smile was more confident than the first timid one from their initial meeting. They walked again along the rows lit with garlands. This time, the snowfall was gentle, like fine pollen, and the city looked like a fairy tale. But neither Mary nor Alex believed in fairy tales. They had both lost too much. "Would you like some hot chocolate?" he asked suddenly, pointing toward a cafe on the corner. Mary paused for a moment. Her first instinct was the usual, "No, I shouldn't." But this time, something inside her stirred. Perhaps it was because he was someone with whom she could be honest without pretending. "All right," she agreed quietly. The cafe greeted them with warmth, the smell of vanilla and spiced cocoa filling the air. They chose a table by the window, where the Christmas tree in the square was visible. Outside, the snow fell, and inside, the quiet was only broken by the gentle murmur of voices. Mary held her cup with both hands, letting the warmth surround her face.
Alex stared out the window, as if gathering his thoughts. You know, it's strange. I hardly ever talk about how I feel, but with you, the words seem to come on their own. She lowered her gaze, feeling something stir in her chest. I feel the same, she admitted, perhaps because we both understand loss. He nodded. His gaze darkened for a moment, and he was silent, as if weighing whether to continue. I used to think I had a future, a home, a family, love, and then it all vanished in one night. There was no self-pity in his voice, only weariness. Mary felt a wave of sympathy rise within her. I used to think I had something permanent too, she said, looking at the Christmas tree outside. My father always made the holidays special. He was the one holding the whole family together. Now he's gone, and everything feels like it's fallen apart. They fell silent, but this silence was not empty. It carried their unspoken emotions, pain, longing, and something new, an almost imperceptible understanding. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll never be able to enjoy things like before, she whispered, looking at her cup. Alex looked at her intently. Perhaps you don't need to enjoy things like before. Maybe it's better to learn to enjoy them in a new way, even the small things. She lifted her gaze to meet his eyes. In them was that same light, not bright, but steady, like a candle in a dark room. Suddenly, Mary realized for the first time in months, the conversation didn't leave her exhausted. On the contrary, a warm, timid spark settled in her soul. When they left the cafe, the city lights seemed even brighter. But this time, Mary saw them differently, not as reminders of loss, but as a backdrop for a new, quiet, yet important story. Alex walked her to the intersection. Before they parted, he said, "I'm glad I met you that day." She didn't know what to say. She just nodded, letting her eyes speak more than words ever could. Walking home, Mary thought, maybe the holidays haven't lost all meaning after all. Maybe they brought me someone who understands. And Alex stood for a long time, holding the cup in his hands until it cooled. For the first time in weeks, his heart was beating not only with memories, but with something new. The morning after their cafe meeting, Mary woke to find a thin layer of snow covering the city. Each flake seemed deliberate, delicate, as if the world itself had slowed down for a moment. She drank her tea slowly, recalling the conversation from last night, feeling a warmth that wasn't just from the cup in her hands. At work, the usual routine felt slightly different. The office noise, the ringing phones, even the smell of paper seemed lighter. She found herself glancing at the window, imagining Alex walking along the snowy streets, wondering what he was thinking. That evening, the market called again. It had become a ritual of sorts, unspoken but expected. Mary bundled herself in her scarf and coat, and this time the cold didn't feel like an enemy. It was just another companion in her walks. Alex was already there, his coat dusted with snow, a small smile greeting her like a familiar song. "Mary," he said, as if the name itself was a small gift. "Alex," she replied, her voice soft, carrying the same warmth from the cafe. They wandered slowly, letting the crowd flow around them without noticing. There was no need to rush. The world had paused for them again. Alex picked up a delicate ornament from a stall, a tiny glass star, and held it up to the light. "It reminds me of my childhood," he said quietly, "of nights when the trees sparkled like this, and everything felt safe." Mary nodded, understanding without needing to speak. Memories, after all, often connected hearts more than words ever could. Do you ever feel guilty for feeling happy when others aren't? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Alex looked at her thoughtfully. Yes, but I've learned that happiness isn't a betrayal. It's survival, and maybe survival is the first step toward living again. Mary smiled, her hands buried deep in her gloves. Something in his words resonated, like a bridge slowly being built between two fragile hearts. They found a quiet bench near the fountain where the snowflakes fell gently, settling like tiny blessings. Alex leaned slightly closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I think I like spending time with you, he admitted, the confession raw and hesitant. Mary's chest tightened, a mix of anticipation and fear. I like being with you too, she said, almost inaudible, yet enough for him to hear. They sat in silence after that, letting the snowfall speak for them. Each flake was a promise of patience, of understanding, of something tender beginning to root. Finally, as the market lights flickered and the crowd thinned, Alex stood. Same time tomorrow? He asked, hope hidden behind his calm tone. Mary nodded. Yes, same time. Walking home, Mary realized the snow had transformed the city, but also her heart. A quiet certainty settled within her. For the first time in a long while, she was not just surviving, she was beginning to live. And somewhere across the snowy streets, Alex walked with the same thought, holding on to the fragile hope that perhaps they could heal together.